Hey there. So I wanted to do a little teaching today about a concept I brought up before, which is everything that you need to know, the 4 things that you need to know to learn to swim. And we have them as B, your buoyancy, air, and movement. With the key piece I talked about last time, the underlying part is your presence of mind. You have to have that foundation of the presence of mind. I talked about that last time in a different video, so I'm not going to go into that too much today. What I wanted to talk about today was what gets in the way. The first thing that gets in the way of us discovering how to learn to swim, is not having the real foundation of your presence of mind. That our focus needs to be this understanding, this presence of mind has got to come first. When we have that foundation, then we start dipping into the kind of the skill area of the buoyancy, the air, the movement. And so the second place that people become stuck is they go too far ahead. They're thinking too many steps down the line. So you're like, I have this goal. I want to be able to be free in the deep water. And so you put this image in your head, oh, that requires, I got to learn to tread water, or I have to swim certain strokes or something like this. Or I've taken a class and they've told me, yeah, you got to do all these things. But we haven't broken it down into these 3 basic parts. All swimming revolves around these 3 basic parts. When you are learning something, you can only learn one thing at a time. You can only have that presence of mind in one area at a time. So we need to pick the area that you're going to be in, not like for the whole time, but just for a particular investigation, let's say, a particular testing it out, either the buoyancy, the air, or the movement. We need to pick one of them to bring our focus and our attention and our curiosity into. And we need to start with the most basic piece of it. I kind of think of it as like the learning is like a funnel. And you got to start with your little body here. And you bring, I'm going to use the red for that presence. You have your presence of mind connected to your little body. So we have this little starting place here. And then the skills, we're really kind of building this big funnel up from here. And you're going to rotate around between these areas of I spend a little time in the buoyancy, I spend a little time in the air, I spend a little time in movement. And I keep circulating out. So we've got to find the first thing that you can really be connected to, and the first where you can start to investigate these areas. And it is not, when we think about that goal of treading water, it is not how do I tread water? It is how do I understand my buoyancy when I can keep this presence of mind? How do I understand my air and keep this presence of mind? How do I start to understand some movement and keep my presence of mind? So some of the steps, they start off, we break down these steps for you, but it starts off with something like, how do I sit on the steps of the stairs and notice how buoyancy works? When you sit on the step of the stairs and you just have your legs dangling in the water, let's say, your legs are not as heavy. There's not as much gravity acting on them as if you were sitting on the stairs completely on land. Now, it doesn't mean that your legs float to the surface and they're flat with the surface of the water. It means that they feel different in the water than they do on land. We've got to understand that piece and to notice if you're having a thought that says something like, and they should be like this. No, they just should be what they are. Buoyancy isn't something that you actually can do much to change. It's just a physics principle. It's just how it is. A ball is buoyant, a rock is not buoyant. Your legs have different parts that are buoyant, different parts that, or your body rather, has different parts that are buoyant, different parts that are not buoyant. It's all normal. but you got to understand it. Okay, so I felt some of that. And then I got to go over to the air corner. Okay, well, I'm sitting on the step. I'm not underwater. I got all the air that I want. Okay, check. I can bring some presence to that. Oh, right. I can get air and be in the water. All right. And then movement. Okay, well, what does it feel like to move my legs just sitting here on the step? Again, it's different than moving in air. Matter of fact, you probably could sit on a step and like move your legs around and use way less quadricep muscles to do it than if you were sitting, let's say, in a chair, moving your legs around in the same fashion. It's kind of interesting, kind of fascinating. So it starts with things that small. And that's a step that you're like, yeah, I can be there for it. I can get that information. Now, you know, if you've like skipped to like step up of here, when you cannot keep this presence of mind, when it starts to be frustrating. So if you're like, well, my buoyancy, if I'm going for this treading water thing, I got to be in the deep water, I have to be in a vertical position, and my head's supposed to be out of the water. And I go over there and I do it, and I found that it doesn't work, and I sink to the bottom, and it's terrible, and I'm freaked out. All right, that just says we just skipped ahead too many steps. We need to break that buoyancy investigation down into some smaller steps. Do we know how buoyancy feels when you're in deep water holding on to a wall? Do we know how buoyancy feels when you're in deep water holding on to the wall and you put your face in the water? Do we know how buoyancy feels when you're in deep water and your face is under the water and you have a full lung of air and you let your hands come into the water instead of holding onto the wall? Now this one, that step, might require some extra safety precautions for you. You might, asking that question might be at a place that says, whoa, I'm not exactly sure what happens. I need a backup plan because I need to make sure that I can get my air at any time. That's when you have somebody there helping you and spotting you that you say, okay, I don't think I'm going to end up at the bottom, but in case I do, I want you just to be here with me to pick me up off the bottom so I don't have to worry about my breathing. That is one of the rules that we have, is that air always has to be easy. If it's not easy, if it's unreliable, then you're going to trigger that fight or flight, right? So it's got to be easy. So if we're getting to that place of investigation, what's it like to let my hands off the wall in the deep water? Make sure that air is easy, super easy. So then you can test it, right? Each level of testing of each of these things, of buoyancy, air, and movement, has to be at a place that you can stay grounded for, that you can keep this foundational piece. If you can't be grounded for it, it just means you went too much out on that funnel, and we got to bring it back in, rein it back in again with some really good questions and inquiry. If you need any help figuring out what those questions are, how to break it into smaller steps, that's what we're here for, is to really help you investigate, where is it that I'm going to this judgment, this frustration, this step that I want to be in, but I'm not there yet. So how can I find a smaller step? This is something we can work out with you and help you through. So have fun with it. Just be curious. Learning is a curious process, not a frustrating process. Frustration, take a break, give a little space, come back to it. Certainly come back to it when we're in that grounded zone. All right, you're doing amazing. Can't wait to see you.